Today I'm going to show you how to paint this wet in wet watercolour. Hi everyone, Steve Elliott here again. Today I'm going to take this photograph here and turn it into a wet in wet watercolour, and I'm going to show you step by step how to do it. Something I've not done before, so a bit of an experiment. If you like the idea of me showing you in more detail what I'm doing, put in the comments below. Let me know how you feel about that, because obviously that makes a difference if I'm going to do more of these videos or not. The photo that I'm using here is available for a free download, so you can actually follow along with me and have a go at this painting yourself. I would love to see your results as well, so if you could post them on Twitter or to my Instagram account or Facebook. All them are you find out where they are in the comments below. That would be absolutely fantastic as well. So did I say I was going to make this photo as a free download? If I didn't, I'm going to, and the link is in the comments below as well. Right, so I start off by sketching, and I kind of just sort of very quickly rough in the rough shapes, just to get the kind of proportions of where everything is, where I want it all to go. And then I start working on adding bits of detail, but there's not a lot of detail in this photo to go for, really. I mean, I'm into the rock formation, the shadows in the foreground. That's what I'm really sort of looking for in this one. And I'm probably going to change the mood of it slightly from this sort of sunny day to a bit more moody, maybe overcast. It depends on your interpretation of the painting. Anyway, if you want to sketch this out, if you're not comfy with sketching, load the photograph into Procreate, put it on a layer, knock the opacity back, create a layer above it, and just trace around it. So I'm going to whiz along to the end of the drawing, and we're going to get into some painting. The first step is to rename the layer that the sketch is on to sketch or pencil or whatever you like, really. And then once you've done that, slide the layer to the left, and then you can lock it to stop you drawing on that layer by accident. Create a new layer and move that below the pencil layer so we can start painting. I then sort of resize the picture so it fills the screen, and I am going to use the color picker to select the palette. So you can choose any colors you like, really, for this, but I didn't want to work with a sort of predefined palette. I wanted to select my colors. I then choose my SCA watercolor brushes, because this is going to be a tutorial using my own brushes. So you'll need to download them if you haven't done so already, and get them installed. First brush I use is the Wet in Wet 1 brush, and I begin by sort of painting in the sky, and I've got the opacity up to full. The brush size is just over 3/4, and I'm sort of just covering the sky area and some of the hills as well. I'm covering that. I change the colour slightly, make it a little bit more blue-green, a bit more towards the colder end of the spectrum, and then I go over it again. Notice I'm leaving that white area, because that's where I'm going to get sort of diffused light from the sun coming in, and that will give us the position of where the sun's at. So I just sort of continue like that, still on the same layer. I then choose a colour that I think would be appropriate for the sort of glow of the sun in the sky. I reduce the size of the brush, and then you can see I'm painting that in very carefully into the sky area again, but leaving some white. Don't go right up to the purpley colour. Leave some white. I've gone over the buildings a little bit, and once I've done that, I then warm up the colour a little bit more. I'm going for more of an orangey colour and put that just over it a little bit more, just to make it a little bit more obvious. And I'm now taking that colour down into the side of the hills as well. And I'm using it for the sand. Same brush, I'm not changed anything there. I'm just sort of getting local colour over the whole of the canvas, if you like, or paper. And this is exactly what I would do if I was doing a proper watercolour painting. And this gives us a really nice wet in wet look. I'm going to change the colour slightly for the hills. I don't want them to be all sort of sandy coloured. They're clearly not on the photo, and we've got that sort of green green grass thing happening as well in the photo. Of course, grass is green, isn't it? Unless you've had the summer like we've had, where it's all yellow and horrible. So at this point, I've called this layer Sky, and no, I didn't. I called it Sky in Foreground, and I thought that's ridiculous, because really it needs to be called Initial Wash, or something like that. So I changed it to Initial Wash. There you can see. I'm just wondering if I actually lock this layer. I'm doing the voiceover after the painting, because I find when I'm painting, I just have to concentrate on the painting, and I've tried to do it the other way around. I do it with the audio while I'm painting, and I just can't do it. So it's easier for me to do it this way. Notice I created another layer then, because I didn't want to disturb the sky, and I don't want to disturb the sand, and I want to be able to use the eraser in a minute or two and start lifting some of this colour out that I'm going to put on now. Notice I go into the second wet in wet brush 2. I've changed the size to about 3/4. I've gone back to a colour which is quite similar to the sky colour. I changed to a wet glaze brush on the eraser, and you can see I'm just sort of cutting that away, and that's why I created a new layer, because I didn't want to damage the sky at all. So that's what that's all about. And then I'm going to use the smudge brush or blending brush, use the same brush as I used for the eraser. I'm just softening that off into there, just sort of getting these distant buildings in. So it's just like putting a glaze on a watercolour. It's exactly how you would do it, just the same. And then I'm lifting out the roof, where the light's catching the roofs of the buildings in places, and that sort of little gable end there. They're sort of very distant shapes, so you don't have to worry about detail and putting in windows and every little mark and line. You just don't need to do it. It's just trying to get this moody painting. So I've got the wet glaze brush selected for the eraser again, and I'm just sort of taking out, that's a little hotel that I'm just sort of erasing that to show the white walls of the hotel. Some little beach huts there, and just sort of cleaning it up a little bit. So that's the distant buildings done. So I think I'm now ready to think about putting in the grass. So I'm going for a sort of blue green. I don't want it to be full on green. I'm sort of going for this sort of colour palette, which is more towards blues and purples than full on greens. And you can see I'm just sort of using that wet in wet 2 brush, just getting the colour in. And don't you see I'm going over those pencil lines? That doesn't matter. Now I'm going for notice I bypassed the green and went for the yellows and sort of put a bit of a yellow colour in there. Not worrying about pencil lines at all, just getting some colour on. And now I'm back into the eraser, lifting that colour out. So I'm getting nice sharp edges on one side of the wash, and then the others I'm just leaving them to be very soft and diffused, giving a really nice wet in wet look to the painting. So that's what's going off there. And so far we're only into 10 minutes of painting, so we've done a lot. The sketch I did speed up a little bit at the end to whiz it on, so we've probably got about 15 minutes from start to finish on the all of this. So there's a lot, we've got a long way in there. Just sort of fiddling with the foreground a little bit. You'll notice I sort of I do things, I raise them, which is really nice. You can't do, I wanted a bit more of a blue colour, as you can see, rather than the green that was going off. And I'm sort of painting around the foreground rocks with this green because I want them to be much more blue, I guess, than the green. I pick a sandy colour which is darker than the initial sand, and what I want to do is paint in this sort of bit of a sandbank where the sea has lapped up to the sand and sort of dug away this bit of a trench, I guess, and the sort of sand drops down a level. So I wanted to get that in with a darker layer. Again, I'm not worrying about pencil lines too much because I can, once I use the eraser to soften off those top edges, because I want a nice sharp edge along the top. And you can see I've got the eraser now, and I'm sort of just cutting away and erasing the paint marks along the top of this bank to give us a nice sharp edge. So very rarely am I painting sharp edges. I'm doing it all with the eraser, so I've always got sort of very soft edges on one side of the paint and nice sharp edges at the other, and I continue along this bank and just make sure I've got all of those nice and sharp along that top edge, and that's looking quite nice. I'm very happy with that. Notice I keep sort of shrinking the page down to a thumbnail size to give me an idea. I then choose a dark greyed off blue. This is going to be for the stonework. I've got the wet in wet 2 brush. I've created a new layer, or I'm going to create a new layer. Here we go. This is again so I can paint over the green, the grass area, and then use the eraser to cut that away as well. So there's a lot of painting and a lot of sort of erasing going off all the time with this wet in wet technique, but I do think it gives a really nice soft look to the paintings that is really, it does give you the impression that it's painted wet in wet. So I'm just chiseling away with the eraser, and notice I'm lifting some highlights out as well. I wanted to see, if you look at the photo, I know I've got it really small now, but you can see those sort of highlights on the photo as well. And I want this sort of highlights on these rocks. So I'm sort of, notice how I'm working from light to dark as well, because I'm sort of getting in these highlights now, but later on I'm going to start putting in darker colours for the shadows. And there's some rock just adjacent to where I'm working now, which is going to be a lot darker. And obviously these foreground rocks are going to be darker as well. So I'm just sort of using a lot of eraser work doing this wet in wet. And in actual fact, if you was doing a traditional watercolour, you would be wetting a brush and softening off edges and tapping it with a bit of tissue to lift out colour, or I would. That's how I work. So this is very similar to how I would be doing it traditionally as well. So there we go. I've gone back to the layer below the rock layer I've just created, because I wanted to erase out this wall, or soften it off somewhat, because I wanted to do a little bit of work within that wall and sort of actually put some detail in the stonework, and because we've got the rocks in the foreground, then there's this sort of man-made wall behind it. I'm changing brushes now by the looks of it, and I'm going into the small wet blending brush. So I've knocked the size of it right down, and I'm blending here. I'm just sort of softening off edges where I lifted out colour on the rocks. I'm now blending them back down. So I've gone back to the rock layer to do that. Okay, I just fast forward the next bit along a little bit, because I'm just pretty much doing the same thing on the rocks. I also erase a little bit more of the distant buildings out, and I also change the opacity of the pencil, knock that down a little bit so it's a little bit softer. And now I'm going to go in and start painting the grass. So for the grass, I create a new layer because I don't want to damage anything on the hills before. I'm using the Wet in Wet Wash 2 brush to start with. I start by painting in these grasses, and you notice it looks like I'm painting the grass in, but what I'm actually doing, I'm painting a negative shape. So it's the white space below the marks I make that is going to be the grass, and then I use the blending brush to just soften that away. And you can imagine with a paintbrush being dipped in a pot of water, just diluting the colour and blending that out. So that's what I'm doing there. So it's the underside that is going to be the grass. It's the negative shape that is making this grass, not the actual strokes of the brush. You watch this again now. So I'm doing the same thing. It looks like I'm painting blades of grass, but in actual fact, it's the underside of it that is going to be the blades of grass, not the dark colour. And then I choose that blending brush again once I've finished putting the brush strokes in. And soften that out. I'll use the eraser just to clean that edge up again. I also decide, I think once I've erased all this away, I thought it was a good idea to actually extend that hillside a little bit higher. So you'll see in a second or two, I'm going to start painting. You see I raised a bit more there and started to blend it again, but I will in a second start to add some of that colour a little bit higher up the ridge of the hill. There we go. So that's not particularly painting the grass, it's more a case of just extending that hillside slightly, making it more visible. I decide that they're not defined enough, these grasses. So what I do then, I am going to change the brush. Oh no, not yet. I'm still doing a little bit more work on putting some more of these grasses in. I thought at that point I change brushes, but I'm not. I continue adding a few more. So it'll be the same technique, blend it away with the blending tool. No need to use the eraser this time, I don't think. Just softening that edge, working it away till it disappears. And I am thinking, look, these blades of grass aren't sharp enough. So with the brush I'm using, I'm just not getting that sharp edge. So I go for the rigger. You'll see me select that. There it is, the rigger selected. And now I can get some nice sharp edges. And it's a lot more visible now. You can actually see what I'm talking about the negative shape being the blade of grass, because I'm actually erasing them away. So it's the eraser I changed to the rigger, by the way. I don't know if I made that clear or not the paintbrush. Just to add those grasses, there we go. So that's looking quite cool. I think that is getting a nice effect of the grass. I just put a bit of dark colour in there and blend that away again. So I'm now just sort of pushing this colour around, trying to get that, I guess it's shadows really on the grass to give the impression that there is shape and form to this rock side and it's not just flat. And now I'm using the eraser to put in some more blades of grass. There we go. Just sort of zoom out, see if I like it or not. Zoom back in. Everything's good. So we're now choosing the rigger brush, and I'm going to paint some blades of grass in this time. So I'm not doing the negative thing. I'm doing it in a more conventional way, where the actual paintbrushes, the paint strokes will be the blades of grass. And I will eventually use the blending tool to soften off the bottom edge this time, I'm guessing. Oh no, I went for the top. Oh, I've gone all the way round, softened quite a lot of that one off. So still working on it while it's really small. A bit crazy to do that really. It's be better zooming in. I'm actually using this photo directly off Amazon Prime Photos. So I'm using it off the cloud. That's why you've got this sort of arrow thing on the image. So I've not got it on my local machine. I just thought I'd try it out to see if it would work, and it does. It would have been a lot easier, to be honest, if I'd have downloaded the image, but because I started that way, I just continued with it really, and it worked okay. It just meant I had to keep moving the picture around a little bit, and sometimes when I zoomed in I couldn't get it to zoom back out again, so perhaps not the best idea. Now I'm going to select the dry on wet round brush, and I am going to concentrate on the stone wall behind the rocks. Well, they're not behind the rocks, they're a bit more sort of middle ground. So zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to choose a slightly grayer blue, a little bit darker than what I've been working on. So I've got this new brush selected, the dry on wet round brush, and I'm going to start working in putting shadows in. So before I do the wall, I'm just doing a little bit of shadow on the stonework in front of it. So this is a much more controlled brush than the wet in wet brushes that I was using previously, but I'm still blending out. You can see I keep swapping between the blending brush and the paint brush to soften those edges up. Also using the eraser as well, just to take little bits out. And now you can see I'm sort of chiseling in little bits of detail. Zooming in again to get a little bit closer. I'm also zooming in on the photo. You can't really see too much on the photo. So you can see I'm sort of putting in little bits of detail just by lifting out on that stone wall. Just sort of indicating these rock shapes. So I've painted all this blue in, or the shadow, and now I'm lifting it out and putting these rocks in. Have a zoom out just to see that I'm happy with it, see how it looks. Looking good so far. So I take the brush size right down now because I want to do some detail work. When I say brush, I'm talking about the eraser, and I'm now sculpting in crags in the rock, or I suppose it's where, I guess it is rock as opposed to the wall. It's either where the wall has become damaged and is breaking down, or it's where the wall's been built into the rock. I can't really tell too well looking at that photo. But hey, I'm kind of making it up as I'm going along, really. I'm not trying to copy every single line on that photo. I'm just looking at it sort of off, squinting and seeing shapes and then just popping them in. Now I've switched to the paintbrush, I've taken the size down and I'm sort of following those lines up, and I'm painting in some of these stones, the stonework in the wall. And they're loosely based on the actual wall, but you know, again, I'm just sort of going with the flow and putting them where I feel they need to be. And the secret about doing a wall like this is you would not paint every single stone in this wall. You'd leave a lot for the imagination. So just put a few in. I'm amazed I'm doing so many myself, actually. You don't want to go too crazy, and don't forget to make them smaller as they go further away to get that perspective thing going. I'll probably take the eraser and rub some of those out. Notice I'm always zooming in and out, just have a little look, see what it looks like. I always feel that when you zoom out, you sort of get a better idea. I guess it's the same as when a lot of people mirror the work, don't they? I tend not to do that. I tend to just zoom out quickly. That sort of, I guess that's doing the same thing as the people that mirror the work to check that they've got everything, proportions right and things. So I'm quite liking that now. Have another little look. I'll probably take the blending brush in a second and start softening off some of the edges of those lines. I'm guessing that's what I'm going to do. Well, maybe not. No, I'm not. I'm going to come in and start painting the shadows around these rocks that are not in the exact foreground, but just a little bit further back. Here we go. So you can see what I'm going to be doing here. I'm doing exactly the same as I've done before. I'm still using that round brush, and oh, it looks like I'm going to change one. No, I'm happy with that brush. So I'm choosing the blending brush again to soft it off. You can see the style I'm working in and how I work. A lot of paint it on, blend it out, paint it on, blend it out. And that's how you get that kind of watercolour soft effect. Got a really small brush now. I'm just making it a little bit bigger. Most of this video is in real time, by the way, so you are seeing it at the speed that I would paint at. There's one or two places where I've speeded it up just to whiz through something that I've already done, but most of it is real time. So I'm not going for realism here at all, really. It is just an impression of these rocks and to create a nice soft watercolour. So I think I'm going to whiz it forward a little bit now because you've seen what I'm doing, and I don't want to make it too boring for you, so I'm just going to whiz this on. So I'm selecting the C wash brush now because I want to go back into the foreground and just darken up the foreground sand slightly. And then I change to the Wet in Wet number 2 brush because I'm going to do the similar sort of thing that I did on the other rocks and just painting some shadows on those. So this little bit of the video speeded up because I've already sort of gone through it in detail already. And still on the same layer because obviously all of this is working over layers previously, and it's still sort of clean. This layer I've only worked on the rocks, so going into the sand is not damaging anything previously because I've not worked on that area of the canvas before. So now looks like I'm going to be going into these foreground rocks. So at this point I start merging some of these layers down because I want to be able to go back into them and probably work on them as an all now. And I've created a new layer. I've chosen a colour that's a little bit warmer. It's got a little bit more red in it. I'm using that Wash 2 brush, and you're going to see lots of erasing with the eraser, and you're going to see lots of blending on these, I'm sure. So looking at this, even for me, it's a real insight into how I work, and because when I'm painting, I'm not even thinking about it. I just do it automatic. So for me to sit through and then put the dialogue over the top, it's making me realise, the method that I use, and there is a method to it. It's not haphazard, and I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I'm putting on a big swatch of colour on a transparent layer, erasing it out, blending it so that it preserves the detail in the layer below. And again, I'm just putting hints of detail at this point. I'm not going absolutely crazy. And you can see I'm not worried about really overlapping where those rocks are at all, because I know I can just erase them out. You wouldn't do that in traditional watercolour. You wouldn't. You would paint a lot neater. So this is definitely a digital technique. I think this video is going to turn out to be the longest I've ever produced on YouTube, or anywhere for that matter. I know I've done tutorials before, but they've only been like how to paint a sky or how to set up a palette or something like that. This is the first time I think I've taken quite a complex painting and produced that. So there's a question for you. Should I be doing detailed tutorials like that, or would you like them much more simplified, just looking at one area of a painting at a time, giving it you in much smaller chunks, or do you like the idea of this following along a quite complex painting and having the source photo available for you to work along with it? Which would you prefer? It would probably be a lot easier for me to make much smaller detailed videos, but maybe more frustrating for people that want to see them and want to just crack on and do a finished painting, and rather than wait a week for the next slice. So let me know what you think in the comments. That would be interesting to find out your views on that one. So I put that kind of dark grey on the left of the painting so I could sculpt into it with the eraser and get these kind of white marks on the rocks. It looks like it's highlights from the sun, but it's more actually the texture and colour of the rock itself. I did 2 versions of this painting, by the way. I did the one that you're looking at now. And then when it was finished, I spent another hour working on it, and did sort of strengthened up colours, made shadows darker, put more shadows on it, and spent quite a lot of time refining it and doing a much more finished painting. And then at the end of it, after I liked it when I first did it, and then after a couple of days, I looked at the 2. Well, actually, the very next day, I looked at the 2, and I much preferred the simplicity of the first one. So this is the one that we're working on today. I've not gone into the second one where I felt in the end I overworked it. I did post that on. I don't know if any of you have followed or seen Lacry. I think that's how you pronounce it. Lisa of Lacry on YouTube. She's got an artist group which I've been a member of since she set it up, actually. So that's going to be 5 or 6 years ago. And I post a lot of stuff on there just because I like the group and I like the people in it. So you can find me on there a lot. And it's probably the only forum where I contribute a lot of comments and things. And I posted that one, that version of the painting on that group. And it's the only place I've posted it or intend to post it. So you can see it there if you want to. But you would have to be a member of the group because it is a closed group. What I'm doing now, I am adding more shadows. So I guess I've created another layer. I was too busy talking then to pay attention to what was happening. But I'm absolutely sure I created another layer there. I'm putting in these darker shadows. And if I didn't, I suggest that you would do that. But you can see by putting another layer on and then strengthening those shadows, it gives form to those rocks. All of a sudden, they're not flat shapes. They become round. So that's really important that you add that extra dimension by going over it. And I was going to say, once it's dry, going over it. But it isn't drying, is it? Because it's digital. Sometimes I forget. So I'm gradually working into the detail. You notice I've sort of gone from this very, very loose sort of washes everywhere to start refining it and putting in bits of detail here and there. But it's still not a massive amount of detail. It's still a very, very loose painting. Wow, that was a bit big. I do like these brushes. I'm glad I took the time to make them. Oh, and if you haven't got them, I will put a link. I know I've already said it, but I'll just remind you. I will put a link in the comments below where you can get these brushes from, and they are absolutely free. Although if you want to donate a little bit, that's, it's always appreciated, but they are free. And we'll put a link for the photo, which is on Amazon photo service. So that's dead easy to get hold of. There's a full library of paintings on there, but I will link to just this one. But if you look through my other videos, you'll find out where you can get the full set of photos. There's about maybe 400 photos there, if you're interested in those. So you can see I'm now doing to the that sandy ridge to what I did to the rocks, where I'm going in with a deeper colour on another layer and just adding a little bit of form and detail to those. I kind of wish I'd left that sandy bit exactly like that, but I just know I'm going to go into it and do more. And I think I should have left it exactly like it is there. And there we go. I'm softening off. I don't think I should have softened off the bottom of that. I think I should have left it. I think that was a mistake, because the sand has got an hard edge up to that line. Creating a new layer here. And now I'm changing the blending mode to multiply. And I'm renaming this one shadows. So it's obviously, I'm going to do something slightly different to this than that I've done on any of the other layers. And that is, I'm not concentrating on any of the shapes or the rocks or anything in particular. I'm interested in putting in a shadow, and I don't want the colour to block out anything below it. So this is the layer that sort of brings the painting to life and makes it pop. It's always the shadow layer. And I've done this multiple times on traditional watercolours, where I go in and paint quite a bold shadow, which is make or break. I mean, in digital, it's not sort of scary because you can just delete it if you don't like it. But on a traditional painting, you take a deep breath, you mix the paint up, you test it on a bit of paper, and then you put it on the painting, and you hope that it's going to dry out lighter than it is that you're putting it on, because it always does in watercolour. And hopefully you are going to get away with it. But it's a lot easier digital, but it makes a massive difference to any painting, I think. And I do it a lot. And you probably, when I do the regular videos where I'm just talking sort of random stuff about the paintings and they're all speeded up, you may never notice this sort of process, but I do it a lot, where I take this one layer, multiply it, and drop in some shadows. And I'll do a similar one where I set the layer to screen and put in some highlights as well. And I'm now sort of sculpting out this shadow. I think the only problem I had with this, when I finish this shadow, if you look at the painting now, it's like in two halves. You've got a dark side of the painting on the left hand side and a very light painting on the right hand side. So it makes me think, right, I need to resolve that. I need to sort of either bring some more lights into the left hand side, or put some darks into the right. And you can see I'm doing that a little bit with the lights. I can't remember. I think I also go and put some darks on the right. We'll find out in a minute or two. You see, I'm looking at that now and I'm liking that foreground, and I kind of wish I'd have left it like that, but I know I'm going to work it a little bit more. Here we go with the highlights layer. You'll see that I set the mode. I choose lighten at the bottom and then choose screen. And again, it sort of makes the layers transparent, but also enhance the colours underneath slightly. You've got to try it it's difficult to explain, but this is how you see there. But don't use a pure white colour. Use an off grey, creamy colour or something, because you don't want glaring white. It will look odd. So I choose creams, soft blues, pinks, very subtle off-white colours, just to get these highlights in. And again, it kind of lifts the painting. It makes a massive difference to how the thing's going to look when it's finished. Sort of making a few up there because they're definitely not in the photo. So I'm just going to go in and probably I'll be skipping all over the place, adding in a few crags and cracks and things. I suspect I'm going to soften them out. I think when I did them, I thought, oh, that's too much. I've gone a bit too over the top. You got to be kind of quick with your strokes there and just put them in quick, and almost like the rocks fragmented. See, I'm looking at that now and I quite like that, but I know pretty sure I'm going to rub them out. As you go further back, make the lines thinner. Don't chunk them up too much. See, I'm looking at this now thinking, stop, Steve, stop. You're doing too much, man. You're doing too much. I bet you I go over the ridge of that sand in the foreground as well. I get carried away at this stage. I have to be careful. Here we go. Watch. There you go. I knew it. See, I don't know if that's necessary, really. It's funny how you can be really critical of your own work when you're watching it after the event. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose it's alright, I suppose. Not too bad. Just checking it out, zooming out and having a look, making sure I like that. That was all done with the rigger, by the way. Now we're going in with the people, and I'm telling you now that colour on there is way too dark. I think I used the eraser to soften them out, because when you zoom out, they're just ridiculously dark. There we go. I'm using the blender. I kind of like to smudge figures out and make them look a little bit blurry, and there we go. That's looking better. Yeah, that's way better. Still maybe a tad too dark, to be honest. Just a little bit. In the second version, I added a tiny little bit of red. I won't say it's pure red. It was sort of a grade off red into the people, and it makes a huge difference. But I didn't do that in this one. But if you want to add that tiny little bit of red in the people, you might find that makes a big difference to them. Just on the clothing, just randomly, not sort of blocking it all in, but just like little dabs of colour in there, just to draw your attention to them a little bit. I have no idea what I'm going to do now. Here we go. I'm now going in with even more detail in these rocks. So this would have required another layer. And can you see this layer is below the highlight layer? Because as I paint it, the highlights just stay there. They're not so there we go. I go into the highlights and I'm choosing the blending brush to blend them out of the way, because they look ridiculous against that dark. And then I'm back into the shadows again. So I'm still working on the shadow layer, but this is a layer above the previous colour that I painted on the rocks. And the reason I'm working in this shadow layer is because it does make the colour so much darker and translucent. There you can see. So all these building up of colours and the strengthening of them, just using slightly darker pigment all the time, starts to add real form to the painting and make it sparkle and lift, making the highlights even appear brighter. I spent quite a bit of time when I was in St. Ives sketching. If you saw the video of the sketching I did quite a few studies of rocks, just sort of trying to get rock formation and things. And I guess that's why I've chosen this painting, because I've now become obsessed with rocks. So you're probably going to see a few more rock type paintings and seascapes and things coming your way. So I hope you into that. I'm sorry if you're not. That's the beauty of painting the way I do. I get to paint what I like, rather than, I'm terrible with commissions. As soon as I get a commission to do, I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. I want to do something I want to paint. So I like the fact that I'm sort of in control in what I'm working on. I don't have to do stuff that other people want, unless it's a commission, because commissions always pay well compared to this work, which doesn't pay much at all really, but it's way more fun. Nipping into the highlights again, just to soften off them highlights against the dark colours. See, I'm liking this now, and I'm wondering how much more I'm going to put in, how much more detail I'm going to work into it. I could have stopped there and it would have been a finished painting. When do you stop? That's the thing. When do you stop? Because every artist will tell you they've ruined paintings by overworking them and just keep going at it and going at it. Bit more detail going in. So I think at this point I'm going to fast forward it until I come to something that I haven't done already. So here we go. So I decide that I want to strengthen the colour in the foreground, in the sand. So I create another new layer above layer 5. I make sure I've got my wet in wet number 2 brush selected. I go to the colour wheel, choose quite an orangey colour, and then I start painting in this much more vibrant orange. I mean, it's not crazy orange, but it is more orange than what I've had on there before. I choose the eraser and lift out where I want a few highlights still. And we can see we're getting a more balanced painting now. It seems less like the colours sort of moving across the painting, and we haven't got this divide quite so much down the middle of the painting where it was all light on the right and dark on the left. And I think I'm going to go in with this. Oh, there we are. A little bit of orange on the rocks, which I think looks quite nice there. I know I'm going to soften that away though, or use the eraser. Here we go. So I'm just taking out some of the colour on those rocks. Having a little look at it again from a distance. That's feeling better. Still working with the eraser. I think I'm having a thoughtful moment there, just looking at it, wondering where to go next. Again, it's a finished painting at that. I could have stopped there and it would have been fine. I don't think, you know, that would have been quite finished. Here we are. I think this is the point where I realised that I've got all this light on the right hand side. So we go in with the colour. A little bit more muted, not quite so vibrant, just to balance it off a little bit. Blending away there, just taking off those sharp edges. I could have made the distant buildings and sub objects slightly stronger and darker, but I wanted to push them right back and give the impression that they really were in the distance. But I think that if I'd have made them a little bit darker, it would have balanced the painting up more. So maybe that was a mistake. I could have done that. I think that might have been an idea. I'm going in with a rigger now, and at this point, I'm pretty sure I'm going to sign it. Because, you know, it could be a finished painting here. This is all, I always put my signature on its own layer so I can move it around, shrink it a little bit, because I tend to draw it quite big and then make it a little bit smaller. This time I'm probably happy with where it is. And I always kind of put it somewhere out the way where it's not too obvious. You'll notice that I have not at this point used my texture layer, the watercolour paper texture. So I'm going to bring that into the painting now. I've decided to put it on at the end because creating the multiply layer that it's on affects the colours underneath when I'm sampling colours. So I prefer to put that on right at the very end. So I put that at the top of the stack and I set the blend mode to multiply for the paper. And that just adds that watercolour textured paper look to it that gives it that finished, makes it look like a watercolour painting. Just that subtle texture. So you think we finished now, we signed it, but no, because, you know, have another look thinking, oh, am I happy with it? What can we do now? What can we do now? I have no idea what we're going to do now. I would be very happy with that as a painting. I'm choosing the rigger brush. So I'm thinking I need detail somewhere. Oh, here we go. In the foreground rocks to the right hand side. Yeah, I remember now. I felt that I needed to just give them a little bit more detail to balance it off with the rocks on the left hand side. I thought just putting some detail in there, not a lot, just a tiny little bit, will help produce a more balanced painting in the whole. I'm doing exactly what I did before, painting on, erasing out, blending, softening, drawing in some shapes. Now, I've not done this before particularly, where I sort of draw in a few rocks and things, and then what I'll do, I'll overwork them, fill them in with colour or highlights and things, till I've got something that looks like little pebbles, I guess. So we're into the highlight layer. Notice I'm choosing a soft blue, not white. just putting some highlights on those stones and rocks and things. A lot of this is going to get blended away. And there we are, blended away. So we are coming to the final stages of this painting now. I'm just fiddling really. I'm just sort of looking for things that I think might need doing and working on that. A few more highlights on that sandy bank. I pushed that highlight into the sand, I believe, trying to get this balance of the dark against the light. That's what I'm working on here. So I guess it's not fiddling. It's a little bit more thoughtful. I do have a plan with where I'm going with this. If you was doing this on a painting, proper traditional painting, you would be using gouache for this. White gouache works well, although I'm not a big fan of it. I'm more of a traditionalist and avoid using white at all costs. And if I have to get the white tube out, it's a fail. But not in this case, because it's digital, so I look at it very differently. Yeah, I like that. I like what I've done there. And I'm thinking I just need something going off in the sand. I want that kind of rippledy sandy effect. It was almost like the footprint. People have been walking over the sand. So at the minute I'm still working on pushing that light colour more towards the left, creating that balance, much more balanced painting. I don't know what's going on with the painting photo. Oh yeah, I was working in straight from the Amazon photos, and if I zoomed in on a picture, I had to come out of it and then go to another picture, then go back into it to get it back to its normal size. It was really weird. So just thinking about where we're going now. I've put the photo away. I've done with that now. So I'm just thinking, what do I think needs to happen now? And this is where I'm going to start working on the a bit more detail in the sand, I think. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to do next. But no, because I'm going with the green, so I know I'm going back into the grass. And it was a very soft green, so I'm assuming I'm going to put some highlights in. Yeah, I've gone into the highlight layer. And I'm going to flick a few more blades of grass in. Just because I thought they started to get a little bit lost. It's all about fuzzy edges with watercolour, isn't it? You get a sharp edge on and then you blend it away, and another sharp edge, and you blend that away all the time. Just when you're doing these, I just sort of flick with the pencil. So just to sort of flick up, and you let that pressure of the pencil give you the sort of sharp edge on the tip of the grass. I'm sure you know how to do that. Yeah, there we go. That's okay. I'm liking that. We're going to have to put a few more in, I'm guessing. Can't stop there. No. And another trick with the grasses, make sure that they are not, I see so many people where they just do them all the same height, the same angle, the same thickness, the same distance apart. Notice that mine, they're all different lengths, different angles, different gaps between them. All of that is important to make it look realistic. If you just crash them in like a row of soldiers, it won't look right. I'm just putting some colour in there so I can blend that away. That's all that was about. There we are. I'm itching to get on with the sand because I know it's coming. This has got to be it. So we are going on a layer above the highlights. We created a new layer. Here we are. We're going in for quite a dark, sandy colour. Even darker. That wasn't dark enough. And I'm going to start putting in these sort of dips in the sand where it's like people have walked over it. I don't know if this was really needed or not. I felt it was essential and I had to do it. Although I've sort of kind of blended most of it away and just left a few little marks. And I like the way the blender worked on it as well. It kind of obviously felt I'd blended it too much and gone back in and put some more in. See, that's quite nice. I could have left it at that. I wonder how many times I've said that. I could have left it at that. See, that takes your eye into the painting nicely to the rocks. And then your eye moves along the rocks, along the buildings, and then focuses on the people. So, I hope I don't... I bet they disappear. I rub them out. Oh, I changed the mode to multiply, and then now I'm sort of playing around with the opacity because obviously when I set it to multiply, they were way too dark. And I've got the blending brush selected, so here we go. Let's rub them all out. No, that's not too bad. I hope I stopped there. Yeah, I'm not going to, am I? What it needs now is some highlights, I'm guessing. Oh no. See, you've got the benefit. When you do your painting, you'll be able to miss out all the things I've done wrong and just leave in all the good bits. So don't forget to, post your pictures. And I'm just wondering if I should sort of set up some way where you could post your pictures privately, because you might not want other people to see them. Some people haven't got the confidence yet for their artwork to be seen to the world. Let me know what you think about that idea as well. That might be something worth doing. I've sort of toyed with the idea of doing a Patreon, but I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know how many subscribers you need before you can think about doing a Patreon, because I wouldn't want to do it for say 3 people or something like that. But I could do some really detailed tutorials like this on a Patreon site, which I thought might be a goer. I've actually so many questions today. I hope I get lots of feedback. That would be really nice. So let me know what you think about that, the Patreon idea. It scares me though, because then I have to be committed to producing content, don't I, and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm doing it on YouTube, so I'm sure I could do it on Patreon as well. So I'm glad I'm going in with these highlights. I'm liking that. I wonder if I'm going to blend these all out as well. Leave it at that, Steve. Leave it. Leave it. Call it a day. Keep going. I just hope I do not pick the blender now and blend this all out. There we go. Of course I did. This is really interesting because it's like watching it for the first time. I've got it on the screen and it's rolling and I'm thinking, please stop. And that is it. That is my finished painting. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, big thumbs up, please. Much appreciated. Helps me out a lot. And if you're new to the channel and you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, because I have lots of videos like this, not usually this long. And I would love to be sharing them all with you. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.